It started on a rainy October evening, the kind where the sky hangs low, heavy, and gray, pressing down on everything. I was 16, and my parents had gone to visit some friends, leaving me alone in the house for the weekend. I had invited my cousin Liam over, someone my age who had always been a little mischievous. The house was old, creaking with every gust of wind, and the basement smelled faintly of mold and damp wood. We were bored, playing video games in the living room, but when the power flickered once, Liam smirked and suggested we play hide-and-seek down in the basement. I laughed nervously, but agreed, thinking it would be fun. We set some ground rules. The lights in the basement could stay on, but the rest of the house should remain dark. No going outside. No touching the attic. Just the basement and the surrounding rooms. Liam decided to hide first. I covered my eyes, counting to 70 as the wind rattled the windows and the rain hammered against the roof. The basement door groaned faintly as he ran, and then silence. "Ready or not, here I come," I whispered, my voice trembling slightly. I started with the living room, checking behind couches and chairs, moving toward the stairs to the basement. Each step made the wooden floorboards groan, echoing loudly in the empty house. When I reached the basement, I switched on the light. Liam wasn't there. I checked behind the washing machine, the storage boxes, the shelves, every possible nook, but the basement was empty. A cold shiver ran down my spine. I started calling his name lightly, thinking he might be messing with me. No answer. Then, from the far corner of the basement, I heard it, a soft thud like something heavy being dragged across the floor. I froze. My heart thumped violently. I called again, louder this time. Nothing. I started to feel a creeping dread. The basement suddenly enormous, shadows stretching unnaturally. Suddenly, I felt it, a subtle movement from the shadows behind me. I spun around, but there was nothing. The boxes that had been neatly stacked were now slightly askew, as if someone had brushed past them. My pulse quickened. I tried to rationalize. Maybe Liam had found some clever hiding spot. I called his name again. Silence. The thudding started once more, slowly, deliberate, coming from the darkest corner of the basement. I grabbed a nearby broomstick, inching toward the noise, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold it. As I approached, I noticed something I hadn't before, a dark stain on the floor, almost like a shadow pooling around a stack of boxes. I leaned closer, and then the sound came again, a scraping, dragging motion, and the unmistakable whisper of someone breathing behind me. I spun, swinging the broomstick. Nothing. The basement was empty. My rational mind was screaming, but my body was paralyzed with fear. Then, from the stairwell, came a creak. Slowly, deliberate, someone or something was coming down. My hands trembled. I shouted Liam's name, my voice cracking. The sound stopped. Silence. Then a whisper, "Don't look." I froze. The voice was low, almost guttural, but distinctly male. My legs refused to move. I wanted to run, to scream, but I couldn't. The whisper came again, right behind me. I swung around with the broomstick, but the basement was empty. I realized then, Liam had never come downstairs. I hadn't seen him once since I reached the basement. My mind raced. Who was in the basement with me? I backed toward the stairs, but the sound followed, moving in the shadows, always just out of sight. I ran up the stairs and into the living room, slamming the door behind me. The storm outside had intensified, the rain drumming like 1,000 tiny fists against the windows. My phone was on the couch, so I grabbed it and dialed Liam's number. No answer. Panic surged through me. I called my parents, but there was no one home to answer. Then, a tapping at the living room window. Slow, deliberate. I froze, staring. A shadow moved just outside, too large to be a normal person. My stomach turned. I ran to the back door, but it wouldn't budge. Something was keeping it closed. I grabbed a flashlight and shined it across the yard. The beam landed on a figure standing near the edge of the trees, soaking wet from the rain, watching me. Its features were obscured, but its posture was rigid, unnervingly still. I ran to the front door, finally managing to open it, and sprinted across the lawn to my neighbor's house. Breathless, drenched, my mind racing, I told them what happened. When we returned with the neighbor and searched the house, The basement was empty. Nothing. No sign of anyone. Weeks later, Liam returned home, unscathed, claiming he had gotten bored and left early. But I knew he hadn't. That basement had been invaded by something, or someone unseen, something that had waited, watched, and whispered my name. To this day, I avoid that basement. Even when the house is empty, the floors creak, the shadows shift, and I feel it watching. The stormy October night replayed in my mind countless times, a memory of a game that turned into something far more sinister, something unresolved and deeply terrifying. I had just turned 15 when it happened, and it all began on a humid summer evening in late July. My friends and I, Jason, Tyler, and Emily, lived in a small suburban town surrounded by dense woods. For years, those woods had been our playground, a place to explore, play pranks, and hide from the world. That evening, boredom had set in after a long day biking around the neighborhood, and Emily suggested we play hide-and-seek one last time before the sun went down. Normally, we played near the backyards or the edge of the woods, but this time, she insisted we venture deeper into the trees. At first, I laughed it off, hesitant, but my friends were already running ahead, daring me silently with their teasing looks. The air grew thick as we entered the woods, the golden light of the sunset barely filtering through the canopy above. Jason volunteered to be at first, counting against the base of an old oak tree while the rest of us scattered. Tyler and I ran together a short distance, deciding to split up once we passed the first row of trees. I found a fallen log, large enough to hide behind, and crouched low, trying to steady my breathing. The woods, once familiar, now felt enormous, alive with strange sounds, the rustle of leaves, the snap of twigs, the faint whisper of wind. But there was something else, something I couldn't place. A movement, subtle but deliberate, somewhere deeper in the shadows. Minutes passed. The usual rustling of forest critters felt different, more measured, more like footsteps. I tried to convince myself it was Jason or the others, playing some clever trick. But no one called out, no one came near. Then I heard it, a soft whisper, low, almost imperceptible, coming from behind me. My heart slammed against my chest. I peeked over the log. The trees around me were dark, twisted in the dim light, and for a fleeting moment, I thought I saw a figure standing between them. A tall, thin silhouette, perfectly still. I blinked, and it was gone. My pulse raced. I told myself it was just a trick of the light, shadows playing tricks in the fading sun. Eventually, Jason's voice called out that the round was over. I moved toward the clearing where the others were gathered, but something in me froze. Tyler had already returned, but Emily looked pale, her eyes wide. She whispered that she had felt someone watching her, just beyond the edge of the clearing, even closer than Jason or Tyler. We laughed nervously, trying to brush it off, but the unease had already taken hold. We decided to play one more round before heading home. This time, I had near a thick patch of bushes at the edge of a small creek running through the woods. The moment I crouched low, I heard again footsteps, heavy, deliberate, moving parallel to my hiding spot. I held my breath, terrified, but the sound persisted. It didn't match any of my friends' movements. My body tensed, every muscle ready to bolt. A shadow passed over me, long and tall, but no one emerged from the trees. I waited, paralyzed, as the footsteps moved away slowly. By now, the sun had fully dipped behind the trees, leaving a gray, dim twilight. I emerged from my hiding spot, heart pounding, and called out, only to hear no response. When I returned to the clearing, the others were gathered, but their expressions had changed. Jason was unusually quiet, Tyler fidgeted, and Emily kept glancing nervously at the tree line. Matt, a kid who lived down the street, suddenly pointed and whispered there. I saw him, a man, standing among the trees. Nobody moved. He described a tall figure, perfectly still, watching us as if it had always been there. The others tried to laugh it off, but the knot in my stomach tightened. I knew what I had seen, or thought I had seen. Something else was in the woods. Something human-sized, but not one of us. We left the woods quickly, biking back home with a silence between us that hadn't existed before. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak, every rustle of leaves outside my window made my skin prickle. Days passed, but the memory of that tall, silent figure remained. I tried to convince myself it was just a neighbor passing through, or a trick of the shadows, but the unease stayed. Weeks later, I returned to the woods alone, drawn by curiosity and a sense of unfinished business. The woods seemed different now, oppressive and alive with unseen eyes. I followed the path we had used that night, trying to retrace my steps. When I reached the clearing, I froze. There, between the trees, stood the figure again. It didn't move, didn't breathe, just watched. I couldn't see any features, only a shadow that seemed to stretch unnaturally. I blinked, and it was gone. The woods have never felt the same since. Even today, years later, whenever I walk near them at night, I feel it, an unseen presence, patient, watching. Sometimes I hear footsteps in the underbrush, always too heavy, too deliberate to be an animal. The memory of that summer, that one evening hide-and-seek, lingers, a constant reminder that some places are not as empty as they seem, and that some watchers do not reveal themselves, no matter how long you wait. I was 14 when it happened, and I'll never forget that July night. I lived on the outskirts of a small rural town in Pennsylvania, where our property stretched for acres, dotted with tall grass, old trees, and a creaky, abandoned storage shed at the edge of the yard. That afternoon had been unbearably hot, and my friends, Ryan, Adam, and Josh, were over to hang out. We were lying in the grass, sweaty and exhausted from a long game of basketball, when we noticed someone walking up from the dirt road that cut past our house. He was a kid we didn't recognize, maybe 16, tall and wiry, with messy black hair and a gray t-shirt clinging to him in the heat. His jeans were soaked with dirt, and he walked as if he belonged here, even though none of us had ever seen him before. "Hey," he said casually, "want to play manhunt?" My friends and I froze. He didn't introduce himself at first. It was as if he already knew us. Finally, Adam asked for his name. "Keith," he replied, with a strange confidence, like he had been expecting us. Despite our unease, we agreed. After all, it was just a game, and the idea of playing hide-and-seek across the vast yard sounded fun. We split into teams. Keith, Adam, and Josh would hunt first, while Ryan, Ben, and I hid. I ran for the storage shed, the one that always smelled faintly of gasoline and decaying wood. I found a pile of old tarps in the corner and crawled under one, heart hammering. 10 minutes passed. I stayed completely still, listening to the faint noises of the yard, when suddenly the shed door creaked open. I froze. The tarp ripped off in one swift motion, and I saw Adam's grinning face. Relief washed over me, but then I realized Keith wasn't anywhere to be seen. He hadn't been caught. Where had he gone? I stepped out of the shed, glancing toward the trees at the edge of the property, and that's when I noticed it, the rope. A piece of thick, weathered rope lay on the grass, coiled as if someone had just dropped it. My stomach sank. My mind immediately jumped to Keith. Why was there a rope? Why hadn't he returned like the others? The game continued, but my nerves were fraying. I kept glancing toward the tree line, expecting to see him watching, waiting. Finally, the other kids left around sunset, and I went inside. That night, I was restless. Around 2 a.m., I heard soft footsteps outside my bedroom door. I froze. My dad sometimes woke up at night, but he always made noise, clearing his throat, coughing. These were quiet, deliberate, calculated. I whispered for him, but there was no answer. The footsteps stopped. Then a scraping sound against my window made my heart leap into my throat. I grabbed my dad, shaking him awake. He grabbed his shotgun, and we began searching the house from top to bottom. Every closet, every room, the basement, even the garage. Nothing. No one. The rope was still gone from the yard. The only sound was the storm of my own fear, echoing through the empty house. My dad stayed up with me for the rest of the night, shining flashlights into every corner, checking every possible hiding spot. Still nothing. Whoever, or whatever, had been there was gone. The next day, my friends laughed it off, saying Keith had probably been some wandering kid who left when he got bored. But I knew better. I had seen the rope. I had heard the footsteps. Something had been inside the house. Weeks passed, But sleep didn't come easy. Every sound, the creak of the floors, the whisper of the wind through the trees, even my own footsteps in the hall, made my heart race. I imagined Keith lurking just beyond my sight, always watching, waiting for the moment we were unguarded. Months later, I returned to the yard alone. The air was heavy with the scent of grass and damp earth. I approached the shed, half expecting to find him there, crouched among the shadows. The rope lay coiled in the corner, the same one from that night, although the edges were frayed and weathered further by time. I picked it up. Something about it felt wrong. I could feel the tension in the air, the same oppressive weight I had felt that July evening. The woods beyond the yard seemed darker, alive with hidden movement. I sensed eyes on me, unblinking, unyielding. Years later, I still live in that house. The rope is gone now, but the memory lingers. Sometimes at night, I hear faint footsteps across the yard, soft scraping against the grass, deliberate, human, and impossible to ignore. And sometimes, when I'm lying in bed, I hear the whisper, "I'm still here." I've never played hide-and-seek since. I never will. And whenever the wind rattles the windows, or a shadow moves across the yard just out of reach of the porch light, I remember that night. I remember Keith. I remember the rope. And I know that somewhere out there, the visitor is still waiting, patient, silent, watching. Because some people, or things, never leave. They just wait for the right time to return.